So I've had a couple questions about how to deal with mouse and touch input on mobile devices. So the good news is that they are kind of related to each other. If you think about it, just clicking down on the mouse on your mouse button is in a sense the same way as touching on the touchscreen. You get the same pieces of information back. Now on a touchscreen, you get all sorts of other information, like you can support multi-touch and gestures and all sorts of those things. But if you're doing simple interactions using the mouse and using your finger to just touch objects or to drag stuff around on the screen, are all pretty much the same thing. And so what we're going to do in this little example is just have an object follow the mouse around on the screen. And and this will work if you're dragging your finger around on a touchscreen or using your mouse. And then I'll point out some of the extra things you can do if you've actually got a real device to test some of the more mobile specific touch uses that you can do. So I created a 2D game inside of Unity, and that's all I've done. I've dragged in one little small image that we're going to use to follow the mouse, and that's all I've got. So I didn't do anything else, just new project, 2D defaults, and that's where we're at. Okay, so I have a little bowling ball type thing in here. I'm going to drag it into our scene. I got this image from Glitch the Game. It's actually kind of small, so I'm going to zoom in on it and just drag it, make it a little bit bigger. Doesn't really matter. It's just so that we can see it on the screen. If I hit play, it's there. I'm going to change my background because I don't like it. And now we have this thing here. So when it's on here, what I want to be able to do is just sort of have it follow the mouse around. And right now it's not going to do anything because there's no scripts attached to it, so it's just going to sit there. So what we'll do is we'll create a new C# script, and we will call it, I don't know, how about object controller? And we'll open that up. So really what we want to do is just find the position of the cursor, and finding the position of the cursor is the same thing as finding the position of the finger when it's touch, on the touch screen. So inside of this update loop, I'm just going to code it for the mouse, and then we can sort of talk about how it's going to work if you're doing it on mobile. So we'll just something in here. We'll just say process touch, make a new function. And then inside of our new, we'll make a new function here called void process touch. And what we really want to do is, remember, this thing is attached to our little bowling ball. So just like we've done in the past with using keyboards to move objects around on the screen, we're going to do the same thing, but just look at what the mouse is telling us. So I'm going to create a new vector2, or how about a new vector3, and we will call it position. And there's a reason why we're creating a vector3. I'll explain in a sec. Position, and that is going to equal transform dot position. And the reason is that when we're going to have to convert some coordinates, which are going to be done in 3D space, and we don't really care about the z values that much in a 2D game. But we do care about it when it starts to change, and it shouldn't. So the reason we're using a vector3 is so that we can sort of save off what our z position is and then bring it back in later. All right, so what I'm just going to create a float z, and that's going to equal position. And that's all. We just never want to change the z position of our little bowling ball. And so the whole reason we're using vector3s again is to be able to save off in the statement that we're doing right here, this float z equals position z. We're just going to temporarily save off what that z value is, and then we're going to shove it back in down at the end. So we'll just do that here. And let's see. So how do we get the mouse position or the touch position if you're on a mobile? Well, it's actually not that hard because we've been doing this whole input dot thing for getting all sorts of input, and it works the same for touches. So if you just say input dot, and we'll just say mouse position, and this is going to give us the position of the mouse. And for now, let me just log this for a sec, so we can sort of get an idea of what's going on. This stuff we're going to use in a sec. I'll just leave it there. But for right now, we're just going to log where the mouse is on the screen, just see what it's doing. And if we notice right now our coordinates, which is, we want to set the coordinates of this pointer, of the ball to where the pointer is. So right now the ball is at like -5 and 0 when it's starting. But if I hit run, Let's see here. We get anything coming out? We get nothing coming out. What do we not do? Oh. So I was expecting us to see all kinds of printouts here about what the position of the mouse is, and we got nothing. And reason is, we've got our little bowling ball here, but we have no script attached to it. So let's attach this object controller script to it. And by doing that, now we should see some printouts. Yeah, here we go. So down here in the bottom, you'll see the coordinates of where the mouse is. Now look, these things are negative because they're off the screen. As soon as I get to this bottom left corner, this is going to be essentially 0, 0. And then if I go all the way up here, this is going to be our highest values, which are 900 by 500 on my screen. And what these coordinates are, these are the number of pixels that my display happens to have. And if we look at the position of this little bowling ball, it's at -5 and 0. So they're completely different coordinate systems. We have our world point system in Unity, which is everything, if we scroll out, everything in this world has a coordinate. And this just happens to be our viewpoint of what our camera is seeing. And the mouse position is all relative to the size of the screen. And so there's actually three, kind of different coordinate systems going on here. And so in order to have this ball follow our mouse, we need to convert these numbers that we're seeing down in the bottom, these pixel values of the size of our screen, or the size of the window that our game is taking up, to represent what that would be in the big world, because that's what we want this ball to follow. That's what this ball understands. And it's actually not that hard to do it. So if we do something like, we'll say position equals camera. So the camera is going to handle all these unit conversions. Dot main, our main camera. Dot screen. So now here's all the different things we can convert. So we are in screen, that's what the mouse is. So we'll say screen to world point. Screen to viewport point is going to give us where we are in relation to the camera. So like the lower left is going to be 0, 0, and the upper right would be a 1, 1. Because it's just sort of the proportion of the distance across what the camera can see. And we're trying to convert this to a world point because that's what the coordinate system is of our little ball. So that, and what is our point? We'll say input dot mouse position. And this is going to reset our z value. So we'll do one last thing over here, say position dot z equals z. We'll reset it. That's why we saved it off in this first step. And then just like we've done with all of our other inputs, we can say transform dot position equals position. And with that, if we run, let's see what happens. Now this little ball is going to be following our mouse around. All right. And you can do, and this will work, like I said, if you're dragging with your finger on a mobile device, it'll follow it, or if you're using the mouse, it'll follow it. A few different things that we can do inside of our update loop. Instead of just always following what we're doing, we can do stuff like if input.get mouse button down. So did somebody just click? Just like we did with our our up arrows and the A button and the space bar and that sort of stuff and some of the other things. Did the mouse button just get pressed? And this will get called once for every time that the mouse button gets pressed. So if somebody just pressed it down, and you have to pass it a parameter. So for your normal left button, that's going to be a 0, right is 1, middle's 2 kind of thing. So as you can specify which mouse button. For touches, it really doesn't matter because you're really only going to have one. So if the mouse button is down or up, or just this means is it pressed? So this one, again, down. Did it just get pressed down? Did it just get released? And is it pressed? And which button? And so that's what you can do for these different things. So you can determine when somebody's clicking the button, you want to do something, and based on that, maybe you'll get the position of where the cursor is, so you can try to figure out if it's clicking on an object or something like that, or if it's clicking in a certain area, that sort of thing. The other thing you can do is when you get mouse button down, you can figure out where on the screen the player is clicking, and save that off so that when you get a mouse button up, you'll know what the gesture is that player just did. Did he just drag from the right to the left, or did it just was a simple click, drag in a circle, that sort of stuff. You can watch those coordinates of the mouse position while that button's pressed, and try to figure out what they're doing if you want to have gestures in your game. The other thing is, if you're actually on a mobile device, you can look at input.touches, and that's going to give you all sorts of information about the touches that are going on. And remember, you can have multi-touch, right? You can touch with 2 fingers to sort of zoom in on areas, or rotate things around, and those will all come back in this touches list. You can get a touch count, so is how many touches do we have going on right now? Is it just 1? Is it several? Or is it 0? And then we can do different things. So that's one way you can get into it when you're on a real device. If you want to do something more about more mobile-like. The other thing for each of these, the touch object, you can have things like the state, touches began, touches ended, that sort of stuff. So let's see if we, just to see what the variables are, touch t, and then we can say t dot, let's see, what do we have here? Type. So that's the type. So is it touches began, touches ended, that sort of stuff, or drag. That'll let you know what's going on. Phase will also do the same thing. What are we actually doing? Finger ID. So all of these things you can get. That'll help you determine what's going on as far as what's going on in the mobile touches. So try these things out. You can print them out if you don't know what they are. But yeah, these are, generally you have to do these on the real hardware itself. I don't think there's any way to simulate that. But if all you're doing is simple touches, then you can do the mouse button that'll actually, or the mouse position, that's going to work on the mobile device as it does in the simulator. So yeah, that's all I really wanted to show as far as getting touch inputs for this tutorial.